Hello, everybody. Good morning. It's easy to know who I am. I'm the only non British presenter of the day. Okay. So, today we are going to be talking about assessing speaking skills for Cambridge English qualifications. And speaking about assessment is one of the things I love the most. Yeah. I come from the classroom myself and I understand, and you will see more about this during the roundtable after lunch that assessment came into my life and it was like a bug, a bug that bit me. And then I fell in love with the topic. And every time I have the opportunity, I try to help our colleague teachers to include more assessment, but assessment in the wider sense of the word. So the focus today will be on speaking skills. So for this session, we are going to look at the Cambridge Speaking Assessment Criteria. So many of you are familiar with the exams. Maybe some of you are speaking examiners as well. So we're going to look at the criteria and we're going to look at what the criteria mean when we talk about assessing speaking, right? We are also going to talk about how we can apply the criteria when we assess learners. And we are going to focus on activities as well to help develop different aspects of speaking skills. It's a long list. And of course, we are going to explore something that is brand new. And I love the fact that Cambridge produces so many resources. And Cambridge not only produces the resources, but they make it available for all of us. So, the brand new resource that we are going to talk about today are the new guides to assess speaking for Cambridge English qualifications. In other words, the famous Cambridge exams. Yeah? So, I'm going to ask her to share a thought. And the thought is, what is good speaking? I'm going to give you the opportunity to contribute to this. Yeah. And my colleague Leo will be in charge of involving everyone in this. Leo, you don't need to show that now. For you to participate in this activity, what is good speaking? Can you go to Menti, please, and give your contribution? I know we have the audience watching us from home, so please, everyone, feel free to look at the Menti code, go to menti.com and share your thought as well. So we can get contributions both from you, but also from the colleagues who are elsewhere watching us from YouTube. Okay? So, what is good speaking? Can you give your contribution to this? What is good speaking? So, if I have a colleague with a microphone in the room, maybe someone could say something about what good speaking is. Someone who would like to volunteer and share a thought. One at a time. Okay, we have one colleague here. Do we have a microphone? I think my microphone is gone. Is it working? Oh. Hello, hello, hello.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Samantha. Nice to meet you all.
Okay.
And
Someone-
for me,
Okay.
can I answer?
Yes, please.
For me, good speaking is when you can interact
Mm-hmm.
with a person and make yourself understood.
Okay. Fantastic. Do we have another contribution?
Hi, Cindy. I think good speaking means being able to communicate to make your message clear.
Mm-hmm. We have another one there, another hand up over there. Yeah. And this is the last one for the time being because if you look at the screen, we can see contributions from all of us here and the remote audience as well. What good speaking is all about. Please.
Hello, I think good speaking is like getting to communicate what you want with clear intentions and like clear words and being understood. Like you don't need like to not have a how can I say, you don't need to be native level or you don't need to sound like a native, but you have to deliver your message in a way that's really clear, and this is good speaking.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you very much for this contribution. Claps, everyone. This is amazing. Thank you very much. Now, also, everyone here and elsewhere, thank you for your contributions with the Mentimeter. Lots of interesting thoughts here. So, speaking of good speaking, we have the record from Mentimeter. We're going to look at some characteristics of speaking and conversation very briefly, yeah? So, when you talk about speaking, a lot of us hear the word fluent. Oh, I'm fluent. I have fluent English. What does that mean in other words? So I got some help from someone who you may not know, Scott Thornbury. And Scott Thornbury says that fluency is not so much about speaking quickly, but it's more to do with the length of the run. In other words, how many words you can pack together without pausing to convey a message. Yeah, so the more words you can put together to convey messages, that shows your fluency. This is why when we tell our students, what did you do at the weekend? I stayed at home, full stop. Maybe if they pack more words into their answers, they are showing that they are practicing and developing their fluency, yeah? Well, also, when we talk about speaking, a lot of us think of grammar, vocabulary, etc. It has to do with accuracy. There are two views of accuracy that I'm going to briefly share with you here today. One of them is a traditional view of accuracy that at one point, being accurate meant sounding like the idealized native speaker. Which native speaker are we talking about? Should we all speak like King Charles? I am a native speaker as well of a language, yeah? So a more current view of accuracy involves assessing a learner's command of language systems such as grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. So being accurate means putting the language systems together, yeah? Put them into action so that you can convey your message and make yourself understood. But also, speaking is multidimensional. There are many facets to speaking. And when you talk about speaking proficiency, we have grammatical competence, we have discourse competence, social linguistic competence, strategic competence. There's so much to speaking. But when we see those terms, let's define the terms, which I think is really important. So briefly, when you talk about grammatical competence in terms of speaking, it has to do with the mechanics of speaking. So basic mastering the basic sounds, letters and syllables, pronunciation of the words, intonation, stress. This has to do with the grammatical competence for speaking, right? When you talk about discourse competence, it means adjusting your language so that you know when to speak more or less formally, and that will depend on your audience, on your interlocutor, among other things that you can see here. And also making sure that you acquire a large repertoire of language structures, vocabulary, etc., so that you can convey messages in different ways to different audiences, making sure that you change according to context, yeah? We also have social linguistic competence, which relates to the fact that knowing the language alone does not mean you are going to speak effectively. You need to also make sure that you understand the cultural rules of the environment, the interlocutors as well. And then you adjust the way you communicate to those aspects as well. And last but not least, is strategic competence. When we speak, especially in our language, and we don't think about those things, we know when to say something or when to stop to hear something. We know when we need to terminate the conversation. And if you say something that wasn't clear, you change, you say something in a different way to clarify any breakdown in communication. In other words, to speak means learners should be able to articulate basic sounds of the language, know what is expected socially and culturally in the language, know when to take the floor to keep the conversation going, know when to clear up communication breakdown, use a range of structures, discourse markers, etc., show relationships of time, indicate cause, contrast, emphasis, adjust register accordingly, and do so cohesive and coherently. I know. It's a lot of demands, a lot to do, a lot to help students with. Also, we don't have a lot of time. Also, we try to bring these amazing speaking activities and students don't react to it, or they react negatively. Isn't that right? Yeah? However, this is why we are here. There is hope. And hopefully, I'll be able to give you some support with this, okay? So, when you think about assessing speaking in Cambridge exams, it's very important that we make sure that we set tasks very clearly, yeah? We cannot assess something that is way too open. You don't know where the activity is going. You don't know what to prioritize. If we think about the Cambridge exams, they have, for example, very specific tasks and they have specific formats as well. All those formats, they are thought about very carefully by specialists like my colleague Graham, so that we have clear tasks in order to have criteria to assess students effectively, but also fairly. So in the Cambridge exams, we have tasks such as a conversation between the interlocutor and the candidate, yeah? We also have the individual long turn. Students have to describe a picture in 1 minute. So each one will take the turn to do this. We have conversations between candidates. You see the format, 2 examiners and 2 candidates, yeah? We have discussion tasks with visual stimulus. We have discussion topics based on a collaborative task. So all those tasks are thought carefully so that we can apply criteria. And speaking of criteria, set the task and then establish the criteria for the assessment, yeah? But when we speak about assessment criteria, we have lots of terminology that relates to this. And now I'm going to give you a speaking task, but before we start, let's practice something. I will raise my hand, you all raise your hand. Raise your hand. When I do this and you do this together with me, this means stop. Yeah? So find a partner to work with. After all, it's a speaking activity. And if you look at those terms over here, the task for you is, how confident would you feel explaining these assessment terms to another teacher? And then give yourself a number from 1 to 5, where 1 means not confident and 5 very confident. I'll give you 52 seconds to talk together, all right? Fantastic, fantastic. So Graham, how do we stop Brazilians in an activity? Raise your hand. Yeah? Okay. Everyone, I will give you a term and then you tell me if you would give yourself 5, yeah? Formative and summative assessment. Any 5s? Formative and summative assessment. Well, we have 1 5, nobody else? Okay, another 5. All right. Let me give you another term. Descriptors. Descriptors. Any 5s? Okay. Any 2s for descriptors? Any 2s? Okay. Bands. Okay, we have a 5 over here. Fantastic. Another 5 over there. Okay, last one. subscales. Okay, I can see some 5s over here, any 5s over here. All right, so we're looking at those terms because those form part of the assessment that Cambridge puts together for speaking as well as writing, yeah? So going back to what is good speaking, when you think about good speaking, some of the things can apply. Being able to use phrasal verbs, conditionals, a good accent, eye contact, intonation, answering questions. But we need to make sure we categorize those things. So, for example, we have here those subscales in assessing speaking, right? So, to assess speaking, Cambridge uses the subscales: grammar and vocabulary, discourse management, pronunciation, interactive communication, as well as global achievement, which is part of the assessment of speaking. You saw on the picture that there were 2 examiners and 2 candidates. One of the examiners is the interlocutor interacting with the candidates, and that examiner gives a global achievement mark to each candidate. Whereas the assessor, the one who sits quietly, just listening, is the one who gives grades to all of the other subscales. Yeah? All of this together forms the speaking assessment scale. Yeah? When you think about the exam day, that is the moment for summative assessment. What we do in class to help students to develop speaking skills may and should include formative assessment practices, many of which have been mentioned by Graham and Michael in their talks. Yeah? So I think we have defined all of those terms over there. And there is something about the scales when we think about assessing speaking for Cambridge, that discourse management is only present in level B1 and above. So if you want to find out more about terminology related to assessment, the guides that I'm mentioning today, and which are brand new and available for you, they bring very simple definition of the terms, and I think it helps us to understand assessment better, and it adds to our professional development as well. So, how does Cambridge assess speaking across levels? We're going to start with levels A2 key. We have subscales such as global achievement, grammar and vocabulary, pronunciation, and interactive communication. If we think about level B1, all those same subscales plus discourse management, yeah? This is the same with level B2. We have the same subscales as B1. However, the descriptors in the subscales are different because we are talking about different levels, yeah? But things change when we talk about level C1 and C2. For level C1, we don't have grammar and vocabulary anymore. It's an advanced level. So we are talking about grammatical resource and lexical resource separately. And this also applies to level C2 proficiency. So you see, the subscales change according to levels, yeah? So it's very important to have this understanding in speaking because, assessing A2 level and C2 level, it's completely different. This is why the subscales change as well across levels. One of the subscales that you can see here, which applies to all the levels, is global achievement. Yeah? So what is global achievement? We're going to see a sample here. So when we think about global achievement for level A2 key, yeah, this is a sample of the descriptors for band 3. Band 3, level A2. It has lots of terms that we can see here highlighted in the descriptors. But if you access the guide, you will find what it means in other words as a means to support us teachers to understand the scales. For example, conveys basic meaning in everyday situations. In other words, this is what it means. Everyday life, having a meal, going to school, work, etc. And producing utterances which tend to be very short. So a yes, no, or short phrase as an answer. Yeah? Remember, we are talking about level A2, band 3. What's the highest band for assessment? 5. Band 5 is the highest band, yeah? When we assess speaking. Okay, now that we have an idea of global achievement, when we think about assessing speaking and looking at the criteria, focus on global achievement first, yeah? Then you read the assessment criteria to familiarize yourself with global achievement in the different bands, different levels as well. And then you can highlight the differences between the bands. Band 1 says this, band 5 says that, yeah? One idea that you can do is you can watch these speaking test videos. We have all our speaking test videos available on the English with Cambridge YouTube channel. You can access all the speaking test videos there. So you watch the video, do the assessment task, and you can also get the students to participate in this activity using those scales for assessment, which have been produced for classroom purposes. Yeah? Where do I find those materials, Alberto? In the guides. And then I'll tell you where you can access the guide. Yeah? Another thing you can do is you can watch the video and then you can compare students' impression with the comments from the examiners in the guides. So students have an idea of what good performance means, of what good speaking is. Yeah? So you can bring that to practice in class. And then it's important to get familiar with the differences between bands. We can see global achievement here. This is global achievement descriptor for B1 preliminary for schools. You will notice that in the green column, we have the descriptors, and then right beside it, we have an explanation of what they mean in case we are not so sure about the use of the words in the descriptor. Of course, you can explore the other subscales. For example, understanding grammar and vocabulary. Everything is there for you. Understanding discourse management, understanding pronunciation, and of course, understanding interactive communication. Yeah? So you can explore this material, find out more, and this is all created to help us with assessing speaking. So speaking of assessing speaking skills, here we're going to work with another subscale, yeah? And then I have a question for you. Which assessment criteria is this? Look at the descriptors, then turn to your partner. Which assessment criteria is this? Any guesses? Okay, shout out. Okay, she says interactive communication. Well done. We are talking about interactive communication here. Another task for you. We have descriptors for different levels. Which levels? Which levels? Any guesses? Just shout something. A2 or B1, let's see. We have A2 key. Yeah, well done. And we have B1 preliminary here for interactive communication. So congrats for that. So we are looking at interactive communication because this will be the focus of our activities for this moment, all right? So when we think about interactive communication, we have descriptors that you can see here for levels A2, B1, and we also have the different bands, band 1, band 3, band 5. Those descriptors, they are usually written in language that is for specialists. It's not practical language for learners. So we need to somehow translate them into what they mean. So when we say maintain simple exchanges, what does that mean in other words? It's about a very simple conversation. Maybe one question, one answer, yeah? Involving a simple Q&A conversation, yeah? But when we think about requires very little prompting or requires prompting and support, this candidate perhaps needs support either from the peer or from the interlocutor, yeah? So ideally, the less support, the better, yeah? When we think about initiates and responds, we are, in other words, thinking about starting conversations, how to start conversation, introduce a topic, for example. And last but not least, maintains and develops interaction. This means being able to open out, start, introduce a new topic and keep the conversation going non-stop. So we can see lots of interesting points here, which are not only grammar and vocabulary and pronunciation, yeah? Lots of things. Of course, we need those, but we need to look at the other competencies as well. We are going to do an experiment here. I will be a language examiner, and I will have a candidate, yeah? A live candidate. My candidate is Yidi, whose English is very basic. Can we have a microphone for Yidi, please? Yidi, this is a very serious test, yeah? All right, everyone. When we look at interactive communication, these are the bands for level A2, yeah? I'm going to do 3 situations with this candidate. And then for each situation, you have to tell me which band would you award this candidate, okay? So, situation 1. Yidi, what's your favorite musical instrument?
Piano.
Which band? 1. Maybe you're too strict, yeah? Situation 2. Yidi, what's your favorite musical instrument? Which band? The previous situation. Probably 3, because he answered the question, yeah? So you see how strict you are? Third situation. Yidi, what's your favorite musical instrument?
The piano, it's beautiful.
Which band? Congratulations.
Thank you.
We got a 5, Yuri. Okay, just to give you an idea, wait there. We still need Yuri for another test. Okay, we have here 3 responses from candidates, each one with their bands. Piano, the piano is beautiful, okay? Band 5. We are talking about level A2, okay? Now, we're going to do another experiment with level B1 preliminary. For this, we're going to have 2 candidates, so I need another candidate. And this candidate is Rebecca, whose English is also very basic, as you can tell. So again, I'm going to do 3 situations, but before we start with the situations, I need to show you the bands for B1 preliminary. Look, band 1 maintains simple exchanges. Simple exchanges would be a 3 for level A2, okay? but that's band 1 for B1. Band 3 initiates and responds appropriately. Band 5 initiates and responds and develops interaction. Let's start with situation 1.
I think the zoo is the best option.
I agree.
So which band? Yeah. Do they maintain simple exchange? Yeah, very simple. Yeah. Situation 2.
I think the football match is a good idea.
Oh, yes. That's a great idea. Everybody likes football.
It's a good point.
Which band? 5. Okay. Remember, this is level B1. Yeah. Okay. Now, situation 3.
What about the museum?
I think it's a bit boring.
And also, maybe they don't want to be inside.
So which one would be 5? The third situation or the second situation? Okay. Well, maybe they could get half marks there, but this third situation is also very important because Rebecca gives a suggestion, he gives an opinion, and she agrees with the opinion. So by using his intonation, he made her change her mind. Yeah. So maybe this could be, a higher level performance. Yeah. You're very convincing, Yuri. Thank you. Thank you very much. Claps, everyone. So let's see what marks they got. Situation 1, band 1, yeah. Band 3, situation 2. And band 5, the third situation, yeah. Just to give you an idea. All right. We have differences between the bands, and this is something that you will see when you explore the guides. You will see that for each band we have a number of differences. For example, band 1 produces short phrases, isolated words, level A2, yeah? Whereas band 3, utterances which tend to be short, 5, longer utterances, etc. So you can explore when you access those resources. You're going to be examiners again. We are going to look at some speaking assessment situation, and I'm going to ask you to focus on this performance here, the performance of Lucas and Umay. All right? So this is a situation, an exam situation, and you are going to be the examiners. Here we have the examiner, the interlocutor, the assessor, and we have the subscale for interactive communication. You practiced interactive communication with Yiri and Rebecca already, yeah? So watch the video and say which band would you award Umay and Lucas in this video.
Now let's take it out music. Peter, how often do you listen to music?
I listen to music every day.
And what music do you like best?
I like your American rock.
And you, what is your favorite instrument?
My favorite instrument is piano.
Where do you like listening to music?
I like listening music in my bedroom and in the park with my friends.
Now, Luca, tell me something about your favorite singer or book.
My favorite rapper is Expensive, and I love his music because I can speak to me in the music.
All right. Which bands would you award Umay and Lucas? Thinking of interactive communication, right? Do they maintain simple exchanges or do they have difficulties or considerable difficulty? Tell your partner. All right. I'm going to give you a second chance. You already have some impressions, right? But this time, I have here the comments from the examiners in Cambridge, yeah? As you watch the video again, which option would you choose? Lucas shows no or some difficulty. His answers, he does not hesitate and answers some or all of the question. How about Umay? Is that slowly or quickly? Doesn't need to or sometimes needs to prompt her in terms of support. So decide which option by watching the video again.
Let's talk about music. Luca, how often do you listen to music?
I listen to music every day.
And what music do you like best?
I like American rock.
And Kume, what is your favorite instrument?
My favorite instrument is piano.
Where do you like listening to music?
I like listening music in my bedroom and in the park with my friend.
Now, Luca, please tell me something about your favorite singer or group.
My favorite rapper is Expensive, and I love listening his music because I can speak to me in this music.
Thank you.
All right. Tell your partner which options would you choose in terms of the comments from the examiners. Fantastic. So let's look at the first line there. Lucas shows no or some. Okay. How about Umay? She responds. Okay, let's see what the examiners have said about them. Lucas shows no difficulty. He also answers all the questions, yeah? Umay responds quickly, and the interlocutor doesn't need to prompt her. So, this activity can be done, and this is a suggestion that comes from the guide. It also brings suggestions of activities for you to practice the assessment of speaking and also to practice using the criteria, yeah? So these are the instructions for the activity. You also have tasks like this where the students need to do a matching activity about the routine of the speaking exam. And also, we have here criteria that students can use, but instead of descriptors, we have questions. This helps the students with peer assessment, self-assessment, but also it helps us to use the criteria more effectively, yeah? Another question for you, and that's a very important question. Just with a show of hands, do you give more feedback on what learners are doing well? Or on what learners need to improve? Okay, I see a mixture here, but I know you. When poor Yidi said piano, you all said one, not three. So I know you. Well, this is a very important point to bear in mind because it's important, and this is something that's part of the mindset of Cambridge when they put the criteria together, which is look at what learners can do, not look at what learners cannot do. Because we teachers, we look at this piece of writing, our eyes go straight to the mistakes. Spelling caught you. But how about what is good? Same for speaking. We have our ears trained to mispronunciation. But what about what is good about the performance, yeah? So according to John Hattie, feedback on correct responses is more effective than feedback on incorrect responses, especially when we use the correct responses to tell students that those are good models and that they should be doing that more and more. Yeah? So focus on feedback highlights successes. Yeah? Of course, we need to highlight areas to improve, but focus on the successes as well. Give actionable feedback. Graham and Michael spoke about actionable feedback. In other words, telling students exactly what to do to improve. Yeah. Give feedback on different criteria. Yeah. Not just grammar and vocabulary. Think about interactive communication. Um, um, all the others that we have seen up to now. Also, you can set success criteria. For example, before the speaking activity, you can say, look, for this activity, we're going to look at the way you initiate communication or how you respond to questions. So you can tell students what the focus is before you set the task, and then students need to respond to these expectations, yeah? And then, of course, use the criteria, yeah, with the students. We also have in the guides lots of ideas for giving feedback, yeah? Feedback using the criteria, but also ideas for peer assessment and self-assessment. So those resources are really rich in terms of support. But how do we develop speaking skills? We have here, for example, number of activities, yeah? With a partner, look at those ideas here and decide which criteria do these tips relate to. When you do drilling, when you do word stress, listening activities, mouth shape, what are we looking at? Which subscale? Any guesses? I can see the guess here. Shout out. Okay. We are looking at pronunciation. So here we have a number of ideas to develop speaking in class, especially to focus on pronunciation. Yeah? You can, for example, get the students to highlight word stress in class. You could also expand and do sentence stress as well. Another question that we get asked when we talk about the exams is accent important in the speaking test? Should I speak like King Charles to pass the test? Well, we have Q&A in the guides, and the answer is you don't whatever accent you demonstrate is not important. The most important is to be intelligible. Yeah? I have an accent, but I hope I can make myself intelligible when I speak. Yeah? Now, look at those ideas for developing speaking. Which criteria do those relate to? Tell your partner. What are we looking at here? Pronunciation again? No, what is it? Huh? Yeah, let's see. Grammar and vocabulary. Yeah, we're looking at grammar and vocabulary for this one. Yeah. All right. To practice grammar vocabulary, think of circle drills. Yeah. For example, what do you like doing at the weekend? I like playing computer games. Now, turn to your partner and ask the question. So you can create circles in class, and then you go asking and answering. Yeah. Throughout the circle. Another idea, say something you've never done. I've never ridden a horse. And then, okay, say something you've never done. I've never ridden a horse. And then you can do the circle drill with students in group to practice grammar. Now, which criteria do these relate to? Any guesses? Okay, very good. Discourse management. We hear from this side. Yes, discourse management at level B1. Okay, one way of using discourse management is making sure that we do, for example, we include linking words. And one idea that we can do, and we're going to do this very briefly, is imagine you and your partner that you are strangers on a train or on the metro, right? Linha vermelha. So imagine you are a friend, you are strangers in a means of transport, and then you start a conversation. Maybe you say, talk about the weather or whatever. So as you start the conversation, I'm going to show you some words, and you have to start including those words in your conversation. Okay? So let's practice. Start the conversation. Ask about the weather, talk to your partner, and then those words. Okay, thank you. We could go on and on and on. And this activity is also a suggestion from the guide. Yeah, it's very easy to prepare. Just think of words, and you can display the words one at a time as well. Yeah, so that students are forced to include linking words and practice discourse management. Yeah, so this is the idea there in the middle, strangers on a train. Yeah, another idea from the guides. Okay, your next steps include a number of things, but we're going to summarize what we saw today. We looked at the assessment criteria and what they mean. We saw how we can apply the criteria, to assess learners. We tried activities. Did we? Yes, a few. And we explored the new guides, for assessing speaking. So, questions for you to think over lunch. How confident do you feel about assessing your learners after this? How confident do you feel about developing learners' speaking skills? What would you like to know more about? Actually, we have a round table after lunch, so it's on assessment. Be ready to ask your questions. Everyone, the guides, we have them for each level from A2 all the way to C2, and you can access the guide in the preparation section by scanning the QR code. When you go to this section here, you will find the resources in 3 categories. You are going to go to the category Teacher Essentials. When you get to Teacher Essentials, you will find teacher guides, and that's where you can download the guides for each level. Highly recommended, Well, with this, I would like to say thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy lunch. QR code.